Good morning.
Good morning.
Epistle reading. James 2, verse 1 to 9. At your blue book, pages 1479 to 1480. Warning against having favorites. My friends, if you have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, you will treat some people better than others. Suppose a rich person wearing fancy clothes and a gold ring comes to one of your meetings. And suppose a poor person dressed in a worn-out clothes also comes. You must not give the best seat to the one in fancy clothes until the one who is poor to stand at the side of the seat on the floor. That is the same as saying that some people are better than others, and you would be acting like a crooked judge. My dear friends, pay attention. God has given a lot of it to the poor people in this world. He has also promised them a share in His kingdom that He will give to everyone who loves Him. You mistreat the poor, but isn't it the rich who boss you around and drag you off to court? Aren't they the ones who make fun of your Lord? You will do all right if you obey the most important law in the Scriptures. It is the law that commands us to love others as much as we love ourselves. But if you treat some people better than others, you have done wrong, and the Scriptures teach us that you have sinned. Amen.
I was telling you earlier that the book of Ecclesiastes is one of my favorite books. But the letter of James probably is my absolute favorite. I remember many years ago, I was invited to be a leader at it was sort of like a retreat. And it was for some Unitarian Universalists who, most of them, did not own Bibles. And I was in seminary at the time, and they asked me, do you think we could do a Bible study? And I thought, okay, because they're not used to doing Bible study. So we dug up some Bibles that we could, and of course, I thought for them, I would choose the letter of James because they could really relate to that. So we started reading James, where he talked about the tongue being the most dangerous organ of the body, right? We would read that. And we also talked about not playing favorites. And one of my favorite parts of James, where he says that if you want to really see my faith, watch what I do, my works, my actions. That faith and action go together. And they said, I don't ever remember reading this when I was a kid and going to Sunday school. Gee, if I had known about James, it would have really changed my life. I would have had a different opinion of the Bible. And I thought, gee, how unfortunate that more people are not familiar with the letter of James. Because this is a man who really, really follow Christ. To be able to look at somebody and not judge them by the kind of clothing they wear or their hairstyle or makeup or shoes or whatever, and just welcome them and say, oh, child of God, come in. We really, really want to have you. It's difficult to do sometimes. And James is trying to tell us that we should not play favorites. And I know it's difficult because our culture tells us exactly the opposite, doesn't it? Our culture tells us that if a man that you see walking down the street has a suit, you make certain assumptions about him. He probably has an executive job, lives in a nice house, drives a nice car, and is very, very respectable. At the same time, you see some kind of a worker walking down the street, kind of holes in his jeans, they look kind of old and shabby, his shirt is full of dirt and sweat, and you think, oh, one of them. Our culture really, truly teaches us to judge people by the way they look and by the way they dress. James, on the other hand, says, welcome, all of God's people. I remember a while back, how many of you remember when Cadillacs were the very prestigious car to have? Yeah? Remember when people used to be getting cars about every couple of years? Because they were cheaper then. And the big deal in any town was they had the spotlights going around and around, and that was the new cars were out. So people would go to the local car agency and see what the newest models look like. This is a true story. It was back in the times when Cadillac was like the prestigious car. And in this Cadillac agency, it was in Long Beach, a man walked in the showroom. Now, it wasn't like today where they have like, you know, thousands of salespeople. They were much smaller a long time ago. And you just had a few salespeople. And here's this fellow, he's in a kind of like a sweatshirt, kind of gritty looking, and sweatpants, and tennis shoes that look like they could stand a wash. And he's walking into this Cadillac agency, and one of the salespeople, the only one on the floor, is sitting like at a desk doing paperwork. And so this fellow says to him, well, can you help me? Well, yeah, I'll help you when I'm finished with this. Didn't even give him the time of day. So he looked around at the Cadillacs and everything, and they were very nice, of course. But then he walked out. And he was so disgusted with the way he was treated that he decided to go to the Chevy dealership.
Yay.
Now this guy could much better, I mean, he could very easily afford the Cadillac, but because of the way they treated him, he went to this Chevy dealership, wrote out a check for the full amount, and bought his Chevy. Now this fellow was a multi-millionaire. He had been working on his boat, so that explains the sweatpants and the sweatshirt and everything, and kind of looking a little gritty and dirty tennis shoes. Wow! Did that Cadillac salesperson really miss out on an opportunity to have someone pay cash for their Cadillac? He could have afforded it, but of course, the salesman was looking superficially at this person. In the 1960s, when it was very fashionable for college men in many places to have the long ponytail, the long beard, Jesus boots. These are Jesus boots, by the way. Did you know that? And the holy pants and everything. And you almost went out of your way to dress down. All right, that was sort of the style. And a friend of mine in seminary was telling me this story. She went to an Episcopal church. This was in Berkeley, and it was packed that Sunday. I mean, they just had lots of people. And most of the people that went to that church dressed church appropriate, all right? And so, at the door, was this young man, bearded, hair pulled back in the ponytail, the holy jeans, probably the yucky shirt, and was going to walk in. But there was really no seating in most of the parts of the church, and particularly in the front pews, because that is where the choir sat. So we couldn't go to the front, you know, except for our friends from Sierra Madre. Nobody wants to sit in the front, is that right? You can't do a getaway in the front. So most people are, you know, around the middle. Some people are toward the back. There was just no seating. And the deacon of the church, who also happened to be a professor of music at Church Divinity School of the Pacific in Berkeley, a wonderful, wonderful man by the name of Suji Nishi. I remember meeting him. Saw this young man. Dr. Nishi was truly a follower of Jesus. And he looked at him, and he kind of led him by the arm. He says, "You come and sit with me." And he walked him all the way down the aisle, right down to the front, and the two of them sat in the front of the church. Obviously, Suji Nishi had read James, right?
Yeah.
I think so. On the other hand, we sometimes hear about people who are very appropriately dressed, and they say all the right words. Is Jeffrey Dahmer, does that name mean anything to you? Remember? The guy who would rape these women and then cut them up and do all these horrible things. Do you realize that there were mothers who would say to their daughters who kind of had a bad feeling about him, "Oh, why don't you go out with that nice young man?" Because physically he was appropriate. And verbally he said all the right things because he was what they call a sociopath. He knew exactly what to say and be as charming as all get out. And this man was notorious. Finally they did catch him, but there were a lot of young women that got killed in the process before he was killed. On the other hand, my heart goes out sometimes to people who are more attractive than others, who seem to have everything. I remember when I was teaching in Orange County, I had a friend of mine that wanted to have a facelift. And she asked me if I would go with her. They had sort of like a seminar for people who were interested in facial surgery. And so I was with her, and there was this one woman who was physically the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen. I mean, I could see men just falling down on the ground, wanting to go out with her. She was married. She had a ring that was more than 3 carats. It must have been like 6 or 8 carats. It was huge. A rock, in other words. She had this big rock, and she was asking a lot of questions. And she kept on saying to this doctor that, you know, she needed it pulled up some more and this and that. And she said, "I just need to be more attractive to my husband because he seems to be looking at these other women." Well, what the problem was is that this was a very superficial individual who was attracted to her by her beauty and not by any quality she might have. And as her beauty, even though she still was gorgeous, was getting older, he would start looking at the 20-year-olds, right? Because some people are that way, unfortunately. And you look at her and you say, how can anyone have pity on this beautiful woman? But I did. I thought, how sad. I mean, she's doing all these things to keep this guy interested, and his eye is always in some other direction because he really didn't love her for who she was. It was for superficially of what she looked like. I can almost guarantee you right now they're not married. Because let's face it, when you get to be 90, you don't look like you're 25. It's not going to happen. I don't care how much you nick and tuck and pull, it's just not going to happen. And if you can't like somebody for who they are, what they mean to you, and their qualities, there's no relationship. Getting back to James, I really like James. I was saying earlier today, I wish James would come here and worship. Would he be comfortable here? You think so? The author of James? You think he'd feel welcome? I have no idea what he looked like or how he dressed. I really don't know. I hope he would be comfortable here. And I hope that he would see that we are a people in progress. We're a people in progress trying to really walk in the ways of Christ. Jesus didn't go around judging people because of the way they looked or because of what they may have done in the past, or they may have some kind of a disease that nobody wanted to get near, or they came from the wrong family. He didn't care. He really could see all of them as a creation made by the God who truly loves us all. I think we should read James more often. And so guess what I'm doing? I'm having a lot of readings from James. I'm really excited. But it also happens to be the lectionary, so that works too. But I really like this letter from James. And I think he truly reminds us of the kind of people, especially people in prayer, are to be, to follow Christ's example of unconditional love. Amen.
Amen.
This is the first Sunday of the